that had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their silver ships flew through every corner of known space. Their laws controlled 300 worlds. Their armies had never lost a single war. Every species they met either joined them or was destroyed. This was the way of things, and no one questioned it. Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his massive flagship. His body was covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the ship's lights. His 4 arms were folded behind his back as he watched the blue planet on his, Earth, home of the humans, a young species that had only discovered space travel 200 years ago. They were nothing, insects compared to the mighty empire. But these insects had become a problem. They refused to pay tribute to the council. They expanded into territories without permission. Worst of all, they treated diplomats as equals instead of the superior beings they were. This insult could not stand. Pressed a button on his command throne. A recording device activated, and he began to speak. His voice was cold and filled with the confidence of a being who had never known defeat. Humans of Earth, I am Supreme Commander of the High Council. Your species has committed crimes against the Galactic Order. You have refused to recognize our authority. You have stolen resources from Council territory. You have insulted our representatives. For these crimes, the Council has declared war upon your species. You have one standard cycle to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, your planet will burn, your colonies will be destroyed, and your species will be erased from history. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. The message was sent at faster-than-light speeds toward Earth. Expected tears. He expected begging. He expected the humans to fall on their knees and plead for mercy. Every other species had done the same when faced with the might of the. On Earth, the message arrived in the middle of the night. Alarms went off in military bases around the world. Within 1 hour, the most powerful military leaders on the planet had gathered in an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. Admiral Cole was the first to arrive. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen decades of service. She had commanded fleets, won battles, and trained the next generation of Earth's defenders. Nothing surprised her anymore. General Henry Brooks came next. He was an old soldier with scars on his face and hands that told stories of 100 fights. He commanded the Pacific Fleet and was known for his calm under pressure. Colonel Diana Price arrived third. She was younger than the others, with sharp green eyes and auburn hair. She ran Earth's intelligence operations and knew secrets that would make most people lose sleep forever. Captain joined them through a video link from his ship in orbit. He was a tall man with a shaved head and the quiet confidence of someone who had earned his rank through skill, not politics. General Maria Santos appeared on another screen. She commanded the Marine forces and was famous for never leaving a soldier behind. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and her expression was all business. Captain Wright was the youngest in the room. He led ground assault teams and had a reputation for creative tactics that his enemies never saw coming. They all watched as the message played on the main screen. His face filled the display, his mandibles clicking as he delivered his threats. When the message ended, the room was silent for a moment. Then Admiral Cole laughed. It started as a small chuckle, but it grew. Soon General Brooks was laughing too, then Colonel Price. Within seconds, every officer in the room was laughing so hard that tears ran down their faces. On his flagship, received reports that the humans had gotten his message. He waited for their response, expecting surrender or at least desperate negotiations. What he received instead was a single word transmitted on an open channel that every ship in the sector could hear. No. Stared at the message in disbelief. His tactical officer shifted nervously beside him. Supreme Commander, should I prepare the first attack wave? His mandibles clicked in anger. Yes. Send 300 ships to their outer colony, the one they call New Pittsburgh. We will show them the price of defiance. Back on Earth, the laughter had faded, but smiles remained on every face in the war room. "They have no idea," General Brooks said, shaking his head. "They really have no idea." Admiral Cole nodded. "Their scans detected 47 ships in our system. That's what they based their war declaration on, 47 ships." "To be fair," Colonel Price added, "that's what we wanted them to see. The civilian transports, the construction platforms, the patrol cruisers we keep visible. Standard procedure." "And how many did they miss?" Admiral Cole asked, though she already knew the answer. Colonel Price pulled up a classified display. The number that appeared made even these experienced officers pause for a moment. 2,347 warships, hidden in asteroid fields, cloaked in the shadows of moons, waiting in secret bases throughout the solar system and beyond. For 200 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. They had watched the conquer species after species. They had studied their tactics, analyzed their technology, and learned their weaknesses. They had built ships in secret, developed weapons in hidden laboratories, and trained soldiers for a war they knew was coming. The thought they were attacking primitives. They thought Earth was a weak world with no real defenses. They had made the same mistake that every enemy in human history had made. They had underestimated humanity. Admiral Cole stood and walked to the main display. She pulled up a star map showing the fleet movements and Earth's secret positions. "They're sending 300 ships to New Pittsburgh. That colony has 50,000 civilians and a small defense force. They expect an easy victory." "They're going to be very disappointed," Captain said from his ship. Admiral Cole smiled. "Captain, take Task Force 7 to New Pittsburgh. 48 ships should be enough. Show them what human engineering can do." "With pleasure, Admiral." General Santos leaned forward. "And after that, they'll send more ships, bigger fleets." "Let them," Admiral Cole replied. "Every ship they send to fight us is a ship that isn't protecting their supply lines, their colonies, or their. We've been waiting 200 years for this war. We know exactly how to win it." The officers in the room nodded. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. Their parents had trained for it. Their grandparents had begun the preparations. Somewhere in deep space, 300 warships flew toward New Pittsburgh, confident in their victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The planet called New Pittsburgh was not a beautiful world. It was a mining colony, covered in factories and processing plants that pulled precious metals from deep underground. The sky was gray with smoke, and the cities were built for work, not comfort. But 50,000 humans called it home, and they had built lives there among the machines and the mines. Governor Samuel Drake stood in the underground command center, watching his screens with tired eyes. He was a heavy-set man with a thick beard and hands that had once worked the mines themselves before politics called him to a different kind of service. Beside him stood Captain Laura, the commander of the Colonial Defense Force. She was young for her rank, with short hair and a calm expression that never changed no matter how bad things got. The fleet appeared on their sensors like a dark cloud blotting out the stars. 300 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons. They arranged themselves in perfect formation above the planet, blocking escape routes and positioning their cannons for orbital bombardment. "Governor Drake," the communications officer said, "they're demanding our surrender. They say resistance will only result in greater casualties." Drake looked at the screens showing the enemy fleet, 300 ships. His colony had 12 patrol boats and a handful of ground-based defense cannons. By any normal calculation, they were doomed. But Samuel Drake knew something that did not. "Tell them we need 30 minutes, he said. "Say we need time to evacuate civilians from underground shelters to the surface for transport." The communications officer looked confused. "Sir, there are no civilian shelters on the surface." "They don't know that." Captain allowed herself a small smile. She understood. They were buying time. The commander, a minor noble named, received the human request and granted it without concern. 30 minutes meant nothing to him. His victory was certain. He ordered his ships to hold position and wait for the pathetic humans to gather on the surface where they could be more easily processed as prisoners. For 29 minutes, the fleet sat in perfect formation, weapons powered but silent. Used the time to compose a message to Supreme Commander, boasting of his easy conquest. He was already thinking about the rewards he would receive, the honors that would be given to the commander who captured the first human colony. At minute 29, the first human warship appeared directly behind his formation. The constellation was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was 3 kilometers long, built from materials their scientists could not identify. Its hull was layered with armor that seemed to drink in light. Its engines burned with a blue fire that registered as impossible on sensors. Captain stood on the bridge of the constellation, watching 47 more ships around him. They had jumped in from hidden positions throughout the system, using stealth technology that they had never imagined possible. Stared at his tactical display in shock. His perfect formation was now surrounded. Enemy ships had appeared from nowhere, positioning themselves at every angle of attack. "This is Captain of the Earth Defense Force," a human voice said over the open channel. "You have entered human space without permission. You have threatened human civilians. You have exactly 60 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Responded the only way he knew how. He ordered his entire fleet to open fire. Plasma bolts streaked through space toward the constellation. They hit the ship's forward shields and splashed harmlessly against an energy barrier that glowed bright blue under the assault. They fired again and again, pouring enough firepower to crack a moon into the human vessel. The constellation did not even move. 50 seconds remaining, Captain said calmly. "I should mention that your weapons are having no effect on our shields. I would hate for this to become embarrassing." On the bridge of the constellation, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Nash monitored the shield systems, reporting that enemy fire was being absorbed at less than 3% capacity. Ensign Amy Porter tracked enemy ship movements, calling out positions and weaknesses in the formation. "They're trying to concentrate fire on our port side," she reported. "Let them," Captain replied. "All ships weapons free, show them what we brought." The human fleet opened fire. The weapons that struck the ships were not plasma or lasers or missiles. They were something new, something human scientists had developed in secret laboratories over decades of research. Focused gravitational pulses that tore through shields like paper. Antimatter torpedoes that burned with the fire of a small sun. Kinetic rounds accelerated to near-light speed that punched through armor as if it did not exist. The first ship exploded in a ball of fire that briefly the local star. Then another. Then 10 more. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos as commanders tried to respond to an attack they did not understand. Captain watched without emotion. He had trained for this moment his entire career. His father had trained for it. His grandfather had helped design the ships now tearing through the enemy fleet. "Commander is attempting to retreat," Ensign Porter reported. "His flagship is moving toward the system edge. Pursuit group, intercept and disable. Do not destroy. We want prisoners who can tell their friends what happened here." 4 human ships broke from the formation and chased the fleeing flagship. Within minutes, they had disabled its engines and weapons. Found himself floating helpless in space, watching as his entire fleet was systematically destroyed around him. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 212 ships drifted dead in space. 88 had surrendered after seeing what happened to those who fought. Human casualties numbered 0. Not a single ship damaged. Not a single crew member injured. Captain opened a channel to Earth. Admiral Cole's face appeared on his screen. "Report, Captain." "New Pittsburgh is secure, Admiral. Enemy fleet destroyed or captured. We have prisoners, including their commander. Shall we bring them back to Earth? Admiral Cole nodded. Do it, and Captain, good work. On the surface of New Pittsburgh, Governor Drake watched the debris of the fleet burn up in the atmosphere like shooting stars. Beside him, Captain was already organizing rescue teams to retrieve escape pods and process prisoners. They really had no idea, Drake said quietly. No, agreed, they really didn't. 50,000 colonists emerged from their shelters to see the sky filled with falling fire. They did not cheer or celebrate. They simply watched in silence, understanding that the galaxy had changed forever in the last 4 minutes. Far away, on his flagship, Supreme Commander received the news. His mandibles clicked in patterns that his officers had never seen before. It took them a moment to realize what they were seeing. Fear. For the first time in his long life, the Supreme Commander of the Empire was afraid. It was called Prime, and it was a place of ancient power. Great towers of crystal and metal rose into purple skies. Billions lived in cities that stretched from horizon to horizon. At the center of the largest city stood the council chamber, where the rulers of the galaxy had made decisions for 12,000 years. Supreme Commander walked into the chamber with heavy steps. The 10 members of the High Council sat in a semicircle before him, their ancient eyes fixed on his face. These were beings who had lived for centuries, who had seen empires rise and fall, who had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds without number. Elder was the oldest of them all. Her carapace had turned white with age, and her voice crackled like dry leaves when she spoke. But her mind was still sharp, and her authority was absolute. Report, she commanded. Stood at attention. Elder, I must inform the Council of a disaster. The fleet we sent to the human colony of New Pittsburgh has been destroyed. Silence fell over the chamber. The council members looked at each other in confusion. Destroyed, Elder repeated. 300 warships destroyed by a primitive species. Yes, Elder. The humans possessed weapons and technology far beyond anything we expected. Our ships were unable to penetrate their shields. Their weapons tore through our armor as if it did not exist. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. Another council member, a younger male named, leaned forward. How is this possible? Our intelligence indicated the humans had fewer than 50 combat vessels. Their technology was at least 2 centuries behind our own. Our intelligence was wrong, admitted. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. The humans hid their true capabilities. They wanted us to underestimate them. Elder's mandibles clicked slowly. In 12,000 years, no species has ever hidden from us successfully. No species has ever defeated a fleet in open combat. You are telling me that these humans, these children of the galaxy, have done both? Yes, Elder. The chamber erupted in argument. Council members shouted at each other, demanded explanations, called for immediate retaliation, stood silent through it all, waiting for the storm to pass. Finally, Elder raised one withered arm, and silence returned. We will send the full sector fleet, she declared. 10,000 ships. Let the humans hide behind their shields. We will overwhelm them with numbers. We will burn them to ash and scatter their colonies to the void. Bode, as the Council commands. On Earth, Admiral Cole received intelligence reports about the response. She sat in her office deep underground, reading through data that had been gathered by spy satellites, intercepted communications, and agents embedded in neutral territories. Colonel Diana Price stood before her desk, pointing to holographic displays that showed enemy fleet movements. They're pulling ships from every sector, Price explained. Supply vessels, patrol cruisers, even some of their home defense fleet. Current estimates put the attack force at approximately 10,000 warships. Admiral Cole nodded slowly. Timeline. 3 months to assemble, another month to reach Earth. They'll arrive in 4 months, maybe less if they push their engines. 4 months. Cole stood and walked to the window that overlooked the command center below. Hundreds of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. What about their subject species? Any movement there? Price smiled slightly. That's the interesting part. Our contacts in the Outer Rim report significant unrest. They have been slaves of for 800 years. They're watching what happened at New Pittsburgh very carefully. Same with the silicates and at least 14 other species. They want to know if we can win. They want to know if they should risk everything to join us. Admiral Cole turned back to face her intelligence chief. Then we need to show them, not just that we can defend ourselves, but that we can strike back. We need victories, visible, undeniable victories that prove they can be beaten. The door opened, and General Henry Brooks entered with Captain and General Maria Santos. They had been summoned for a strategic planning session, and their faces showed the seriousness of the moment. "We've all seen the numbers," Brooks said, taking a seat. 10,000 ships is more than we can face in a straight fight, even with our technology advantage. We need a different approach. Captain pulled up a tactical display. "I've been studying fleet movements. They're spread thin across the galaxy. Most of their power is concentrated in a few key systems. Their shipyards, their fuel production facilities. If we can hit those targets, we can cripple their ability to make war." General Santos nodded. "My Marines are ready for boarding operations. We've trained against ship designs for 15 years. Give us targets and we'll take them." Admiral Cole studied the map. Points of light represented enemy positions, supply lines, vulnerable targets. The thought they were the hunters. They had no idea they were about to become prey. "We fight on multiple fronts," she decided. "Captain, you'll lead a strike force against their outer supply depots. Cut their logistics, force them to slow their advance. General Santos, prepare boarding teams for captured vessels. Every ship we take is a ship they lose. General Brooks, you'll coordinate home defense. When their fleet arrives, we need to be ready." "And the Alliance?" Price asked. "The other species watching us?" "That's my job," Cole replied. "I'll make contact with the resistance movements on the subject worlds, offer them weapons, training, support. If they rise up when we need them, they will be fighting on 100 fronts instead of one." The officers exchanged glances. It was a bold plan, a risky plan, but it was better than waiting for 10,000 enemy ships to arrive at Earth. "One more thing," Admiral Cole added. "We need to prepare something special for their main fleet, something they won't expect. I want our best scientists working on it immediately." "What kind of something?" Brooks asked. Cole smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The think numbers will win this war. We're going to show them that human creativity beats numbers every time. Get me our research teams. Tell them I want options. Lots of options." The meeting ended, and the officers departed to their various duties. Admiral Cole remained alone in her office, staring at the star map that showed the positions of friend and enemy across the galaxy. 4 months. 4 months to turn the tide of an interstellar war. 4 months to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. She had faced worse odds before. So had every generation of humans throughout history. They had always found a way to survive, to adapt, to win. They had made one critical error. They had assumed that human laughter was a sign of ignorance or foolishness. They did not understand that humans laughed in the face of danger because they knew something their enemies did not. Humans were at their most dangerous when everyone expected them to lose. 6 months had passed since the declared war on humanity, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one had predicted. Human fleets struck at enemy positions across 100 light years, destroying supply depots, liberating slave worlds, and showing the oppressed peoples of the galaxy that the ancient empire could bleed. Captain Wright led his ground assault team through the forests of a world of towering trees and endless green. They had conquered this planet 800 years ago, enslaving the native population and stripping their resources. They had known nothing but chains and labor for longer than human civilization had existed. Today, that was going to change. Wright's team moved silently through the undergrowth. They wore adaptive camouflage that shifted to match their surroundings. Their weapons were compact but deadly. Behind them came 200 Marines, the finest soldiers Earth had ever produced. Lieutenant Carol Hayes moved up beside Wright. She was his second in command, a small woman with quick eyes and faster reflexes. Garrison is just ahead, Captain. Thermal scans show approximately 300 guards. Civilians. Over 5,000 in the processing facility. They're being worked around the clock. Wright nodded. Standard assault pattern, breach from multiple points. Priority is civilian safety. I want those protected at all costs. The attack began at dawn. Human soldiers emerged from the forest like ghosts, their weapons spitting fire that cut through armor. The guards, accustomed to dealing with unarmed slaves, were not prepared for an enemy that could fight back. Wright led the charge into the main compound. An officer raised a weapon, and Wright dropped him with a single shot. Two more enemies appeared from a doorway, and Lieutenant Hayes eliminated both before they could fire. Within 30 minutes, the garrison was secured. 300 guards were dead or captured. Human casualties were minimal, and 5,000 stood blinking in the morning sun, unable to believe what they were seeing. An elderly approached Wright. She was small, with 4 arms like all her people and fur that had turned gray with age. Her eyes were wet with tears she did not bother to hide. "You are humans," she said in accented but clear speech. "We have heard stories. We did not believe them." Wright removed his helmet so she could see his face. "The stories are true. We're here to help." Help, the word seemed strange to her, as if she had never heard it before. No one helps we are slaves. We have always been slaves. Wright knelt so he could look into her eyes. "Not anymore. We're offering you a choice. Fight with us against and when this war is over, your world will be yours. No tribute, no masters, just freedom." The elder looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to her people, who had gathered around to listen. She spoke in her own language, words that Wright could not understand but whose meaning was clear from the reaction they caused. They began to cheer. Some fell to their knees. Others raised their 4 arms toward the sky in what Wright later learned was their gesture of highest joy. The Alliance had gained its first new member. In the following weeks, similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human strike forces liberated a reptilian species who had been conquered 3,000 years ago. They freed the silicates of Prism 7, crystalline beings who communicated through patterns of light. They made contact with the wandering people, nomads who traveled the space between stars in massive generation ships. Each species had a different story, a different culture, a different reason to hate but they all shared one thing, the desire to be free. Admiral Cole coordinated the Alliance from her underground command center on Earth. She spent her days in meetings with alien leaders, negotiating treaties and coordinating military operations. It was exhausting work, but every new ally made humanity stronger. Colonel Diana Price brought her daily intelligence reports, each one showing the Empire fraying at the edges. 17 species have officially joined the Alliance, Price reported. Another dozen are considering it. They are having to divert resources to put down rebellions on worlds they thought were completely controlled. And their main fleet. Still assembling. Current estimates put their strength at just over 10,000 ships. They'll be ready to move on Earth within the month. Admiral Cole studied the tactical displays. The numbers were still against them. Even with their technology advantage and new allies, Humanity could not field enough ships to face 10,000 enemies in a straight fight. But Admiral Cole had not survived decades of military service by fighting fair. "Show me Operation Last Laugh," she said. Price pulled up a classified file. The display showed technical readouts, fleet positions, and a battle plan that had been in development since before the war began. "They expect us to defend Earth with everything we have," Price explained. "They expect a battle of attrition, numbers against technology. They're planning to overwhelm us through sheer force. And instead we let them come. We show them a fleet they can beat. We make them confident, and then we spring the trap." Admiral Cole nodded slowly. It was a massive gamble. If anything went wrong, Earth would be defenseless against the largest fleet ever assembled. But if it worked, the war would be over in a single day. "Contact Captain on the Constellation," she ordered, "and get me General Santos. It's time to finalize the details." Far across the galaxy, Supreme Commander reviewed his own battle plans. His fleet was nearly ready. 10,000 ships, crewed by the finest warriors the Empire had ever produced. They would descend on Earth like a storm and wipe humanity from existence. His tactical officers assured him that victory was certain. The humans might have won a few battles, but they could not stand against the full might of the Empire. Their rebellion would be crushed, and the galaxy would return to its proper order. Believed them, he had to believe them. The alternative was unthinkable. But late at night, when his ship was quiet and his officers were asleep, he found himself thinking about the humans who had laughed at his declaration of war. He thought about the impossible technologies they had revealed, the alliances they had built, the victories they had won against all odds. And he wondered, just for a moment, if he had made a terrible mistake. The thought passed quickly. They had ruled for 12,000 years. They had crushed every enemy who dared to challenge them. The humans were clever, yes, but cleverness could not defeat 10,000 warships. Could it? The Armada entered the Sol system like a plague of silver locusts. 10,000 warships, arranged in a sphere formation that blotted out the stars. Every vessel was armed with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Every crew was trained for victory. Every commander believed that this day would mark the end of humanity's brief rebellion. Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. His 4 arms were folded behind his back as he watched the blue marble of Earth grow larger on his. Such a small world to have caused so much trouble. Soon it would be nothing but ash and memory. "Human fleet detected," his tactical officer reported. "Approximately 3,000 ships forming a defensive line between us and the planet." His mandibles clicked in what passed for satisfaction among his kind. 3,000 against 10,000. They are brave, I will grant them that. Foolish, but brave. "Shall I order the attack, Supreme Commander?" "Yes, all ships advance. Standard conquest formation. I want this finished before the day is over." The fleet moved forward like a wall of death. 3,000 human ships waited for them, small and outnumbered but refusing to retreat. On the bridge of the Constellation, Captain watched the enemy approach with calm eyes. "They're taking the bait," he said quietly. Admiral Cole's voice came through his private channel. "All ships execute Phase 1. Fighting retreat toward Luna. Make it look good." The human fleet opened fire, but instead of standing their ground, they began to fall back. Slowly at first, then faster, as if the weight of the enemy assault was pushing them toward the moon. Ships pursued, their commanders eager to claim the glory of destroying human vessels. "They're following us," reported, "just like we planned." "Keep them coming," Cole replied. "We need them deep in the gravity well before we spring the trap." The retreat continued. Human ships fired as they, destroying dozens of enemy vessels but taking losses of their own. From the outside, it looked like a desperate last stand slowly being overwhelmed by superior numbers. watched with growing confidence. The humans were fighting well, but it was not enough. His fleet was pushing them back, destroying them piece by piece. Soon, they would have nowhere left to run. "Supreme Commander," his tactical officer said suddenly, "I'm detecting anomalous readings from the dark side of the moon." "What kind of readings?" Before the officer could answer, the first human ship. It was a dreadnought 3 kilometers long, appearing from nothing like a ghost, becoming solid. Then another appeared, then 10 more, then 100. From the dark side of Luna, from hidden bases on Mars, from hollowed-out asteroids throughout the belt, humanity's true fleet emerged. Not 3,000 ships, but 8,000. They appeared behind the formation, surrounding the enemy armada in a perfect sphere of human steel. Stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red icons appeared everywhere, each one representing an enemy vessel that had not existed moments before. His perfect formation was now trapped, caught between the retreating human fleet and the fresh ships emerging from hiding. "This is Admiral Cole of the United Earth Defense Force," a human voice said over the open channel. "Supreme Commander, you asked for a war. You should have done more research. Humans have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We are very, very good at it." His mandibles clicked rapidly. "All ships break formation. Prepare for combat on all sides." The order came too late. Human ships attacked from every direction, their weapons tearing through shields with terrible efficiency. The formation that had seemed so unstoppable moments ago dissolved into chaos. Captain pushed the Constellation into the heart of the battle. His crew worked with silent precision, targeting enemy vessels and coordinating with allied ships. Around him, the largest space battle in galactic history raged in all directions. "Admiral, we have a breach in their northern formation," he reported. "I can reach their flagship if we push now." "Do it," Cole ordered. "General Santos, your Marines are clear to launch." General Maria Santos led the boarding operations from her command ship. Drop pods launched toward disabled vessels, each one carrying a squad of her finest Marines. They had trained for this moment for 15 years, studying enemy ship designs, learning combat tactics, preparing for the fight of their lives. Santos herself commanded the assault on his flagship. Her pod breached the hull near the engine section, and she led 20 Marines through corridors filled with enemy soldiers. They were larger and stronger, but the humans were faster, better trained, and fighting for everything they loved. Room by room, deck by deck, they pushed toward the bridge. Warriors fell before them. Santos lost soldiers too, good men and women who had believed in the cause enough to die for it. She did not let their sacrifice slow her down. She could mourn later. Right now, she had a war to win. The bridge doors exploded inward, and Santos stepped through with her weapon raised, stood at the command throne, surrounded by his personal guard. For a moment, the two commanders faced each other across the room. Then the guards attacked, and Santos showed them what human soldiers could do. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, his guard lay dead on the deck, and Santos stood over the Supreme Commander with her weapon pointed at his head. "It's over," she said. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your empire is falling. The species you enslaved are rising up across the galaxy. You can surrender and live, or you can die here. Your choice." Looked at the human standing over him. Small, soft, nothing like the mighty warriors who had built the empire. And yet here she was, victorious, while everything he had known crumbled around him. "How?" he asked. "We ruled for 12,000 years. We were invincible." Santos lowered her weapon slightly. "You ruled because no one had the strength to challenge you. Now someone does. The galaxy is changing. You can be part of that change, or you can be left behind." Outside, the battle was ending. Human ships moved through the wreckage of the Armada, accepting surrenders and rescuing survivors. Of the 10,000 ships that had entered the Sol system, fewer than 2,000 remained combat capable. Most of those were surrendering rather than facing destruction. Admiral Cole watched the final tallies come in from her command center on Earth. The greatest gamble in human history had paid off. The Empire was broken. The war was won. 1 year later, Admiral Cole stood before the new Galactic Assembly on a space station built by human and engineers working together. Representatives of 23 species sat around her, including the who had been given a seat as equals rather than rulers. "How did you do it?" the elder asked. "How did your species defeat an empire that ruled for 12,000 years?" Cole thought about all the people who had fought and died to make this moment possible. She thought about the generations of humans who had prepared in secret, building ships and weapons and plans for a war they knew was coming. She thought about Captain and General Santos and all the soldiers who had risked everything for a chance at victory. "We are human," she said simply. "We have been underestimated before. It never ends well for the other side." The assembly laughed, and for the first time in galactic history, humanity laughed with equals. The war was over. The real work of building a free galaxy had just begun. But as Cole looked around at the faces of allies who had once been strangers, she knew that humanity would not face that challenge alone. They had gone to the stars looking for enemies and found something better instead. They had found a family,